You want to judge somebody, you want to find out whether they're cool or not. If they want something from you, they're going to be nice to you.
After decades of silence, James Garner left behind a private note meant for just one person, Doris Day. What he confessed inside changes how we see Hollywood forever. Before James Garner became the face audiences trusted, he learned how to survive. Born James Scott Garner on April 7, 1928 in Norman, Oklahoma, his childhood came with loss and strain. His mother died when he was 5, and life with a harsh stepmother forced him to grow tough fast. Those early years shaped the empathy and emotional weight that later defined his best work. Long before Hollywood, Garner lived many lives. He took blue-collar jobs, tried football, and served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, where he suffered 2 wounds and earned the Purple Heart. The war and the work left him with little patience for fake airs and a deep respect for ordinary people. Audiences felt that truth the moment he stepped on screen. Fame did not come through a grand plan. Garner entered acting by chance in the early 1950s and spent a short time at the Actors Studio in New York. He never built a flashy star image. His style stayed plain, relaxed, and honest, which set him apart in an era filled with bold gestures and big speeches. That choice changed his life in 1957 when he landed the role of Brett Maverick on the TV western Maverick. The part made him a household name. As a clever, witty, and reluctant gunslinger, he flipped the rules of the genre. Instead of stiff heroes, he gave viewers humor, doubt, and charm, and the audience loved him for it. Maverick did more than bring fame. It set the pattern for his career. Garner played men who used sense before force, held firm values without preaching, and showed strength without showing off. From private detectives to soldiers, from love stories to westerns, he carried the same steady decency into every role. His move from television to film felt natural, and the screen never lost that quiet confidence people trusted from the start. Before James Garner became a symbol of quiet strength, he proved he could command any screen put in front of him. From The Great Escape, 1963, to the Americanization of Emily, 1964, Grand Prix, 1966, and Support Your Local Sheriff, 1969, he moved from tension to humor to high-speed action without losing his grip on the audience. That range made him a star, but what set him apart came when the camera stopped. In an era when studios held the power, Garner fought back. He sued Warner Brothers over contract terms and won, then took on Universal and won again. These cases shifted how performers were treated and gave others the courage to challenge the system. Garner never chased the spotlight for this fight, but the stand he took matched the values he lived by on and off screen. In 1974, he returned to television with Murphy's Romance and created one of TV's most lasting heroes. Murphy's Romance brought an Academy Award nomination. In Space Cowboys 2000, he shared the screen with legends and held his own. Then came The Notebook, 2004, where he played the older Noah Calhoun and gave a portrait of love built on memory, patience, and devotion, reaching a new generation of viewers. James Garner's career told one story of range and courage. His personal life told another, one of loyalty and long-lasting love. In a town known for short chapters, his romance became a quiet exception, steady, private, and built to last, just like the man himself. Hollywood marriages often begin with fireworks and end in silence. James Garner's began in 16 days and lasted a lifetime. Garner was married only once to Lois Josephine Fleischman Clark, a woman who became the emotional anchor of his life for nearly 60 decades. They met at a party in 1956, and what followed moved fast.
In an industry where stars dated for years before settling down, Garner trusted his instincts. Just 16 days after they met, on August 17, 1956, James Garner and Lois Clark got married. The decision raised eyebrows, yet it became one of the longest-lasting unions in Hollywood. Garner spoke about that rush to love with honesty and humor. "We went to dinner every night for 14 nights. I was just nuts about her," he said. Their honeymoon was simple, even for normal standards, and far from the image of movie star luxury. Garner joked that he spent $77 on the trip, and it almost broke him. That mix of thrift, affection, and respect pointed to the kind of marriage they would build, one rooted in everyday life rather than glamour. Fame, wealth, and studio parties never defined their bond. Commitment did. Garner spoke about marriage with wit shaped by experience. Comparing it to military service, he once said, "Marriage is like the army. Everyone complains, but you'd be surprised how many people re-enlist." Behind the joke was a belief that long marriages are built on endurance, not perfection.
When they married, Lois Clark had a young daughter from a previous marriage. A 9-year-old child was recovering from polio, an illness that changed many lives in the 1950s. Garner stepped into the role of father without hesitation, accepting both Lois and her daughter as family from the start. It was an early sign of the man he was off-screen, steady, responsible, and guided by the same decency audiences felt in his performances. Hollywood is famous for broken marriages, rushed divorces, and love stories that don't survive the spotlight. But James Garner's greatest role wasn't played on a movie set. It was the quiet, lifelong commitment he made at home. In 1958, James and Lois welcomed their only child together, a daughter named Greta, born on January 4th. They lovingly called her She, and from that moment she became the heart of their world. Even as Garner's career demanded constant travel and long hours, he stayed deeply connected to his family, sometimes turning down opportunities just to be present as a husband and father. While many celebrity couples fell apart under pressure, the Garners chose privacy over publicity. Their marriage, however, was not perfect or effortless. They went through 2 painful separations, one for 3 months in 1970 and another beginning in 1979. To outsiders, it may have looked like the beginning of the end, but for James and Lois, the distance only made one thing clearer: they were not ready to give up on each other. After time apart and honest reflection, they found their way back. In September 1981, they reunited, not with headlines or dramatic statements, but with a quiet decision to try again, to forgive, and to rebuild. It was a choice rooted in love, shared history, and a bond that refused to fade. From that point on, they remained together until James Garner's death in 2014. In an industry where relationships often burn fast and disappear just as quickly, their nearly 58-year marriage became something rare, a story of endurance, patience, and real partnership. Their differences never became walls between them. Lois practiced Judaism, and Garner respected her faith, navigating cultural and personal differences with understanding rather than conflict. It was another sign of the mutual respect that shaped their life together. And in the quiet twilight of his life, as the cameras faded and the applause grew distant, James Garner wasn't chasing fame anymore. He was looking back at the family he protected, the marriage he fought for, and the love that stayed when so many others walked away. Everyone thought he had it all, the career, the charm, the kind of fame that lasts a lifetime. But when he finally sat down to write a last private note to Doris Day, what came out wasn't victory or pride. It was a quiet truth that had waited decades to be said. James Garner didn't write like a legend looking back on a perfect life. He wrote like a man who had carried more than he ever showed. I never said enough when it mattered. We spent our lives smiling for cameras, being brave for everyone else, but rarely honest about the weight we carried.
The words were simple, almost gentle, just like the man who had always called himself an accidental movie star. In the letter, he revealed that his easygoing image had been a disguise. People saw him as calm, lucky, unbothered. But behind that smile, he said, was constant worry. Worry about work, worry about money, worry about whether he truly deserved the success that followed him. To Doris Day, who had also hidden heartbreak behind a bright public image, he spoke with rare openness. He wrote, "You understood better than anyone else how lonely it can be to be adored." Garner reflected on Hollywood that demanded perfection but offered very little mercy. Contracts were harsh, studios were controlling, and the pressure to stay lovable never disappeared. He reminded her of the battles he fought with studios for fair treatment, moments when he refused to be quietly mistreated. But even those victories, he confessed, came with exhaustion. He wrote, "Fighting shouldn't have to be the price of dignity." Then came the regrets, missed roles, relationships stretched thin, the emotional cost of always being cast as the good guy, even in real life. "I wish I'd been softer with myself," he admitted. "I wish I hadn't confused endurance with strength." It was the kind of honesty rarely heard from men of his generation, especially men who had spent their lives being admired. He also wrote about pain, the kind no one sees, injuries that never fully healed, days when smiling took effort. "There were times the pain scared me," he confessed, "but I didn't want to disappoint anyone, not fans, not producers, not even strangers." So he kept going, carrying it quietly. Most of all, he wrote about friendship. What he shared with Doris Day, he said, was something rare in Hollywood, trust without performance. "You never asked me to be anything other than Jim," he told her. "No charm, no lines, no act." He thanked her for proving that kindness could survive fame, that decency in such a ruthless business was not weakness, but quiet rebellion. And as the note drew to a close, the tone softened even more. Not sad, not bitter, just peaceful. It wasn't a goodbye filled with drama. It was a man finally letting himself be seen, thanking the one person who had always known who he was when the cameras were gone. "If this is the last thing I leave behind, I want it to be the truth." James Garner's words, written to Doris Day, were more than a note, they were a revelation. He spoke with gratitude for his wife, his family, and the fans who followed him through decades of Hollywood glory. But he didn't sugarcoat his life. "It wasn't perfect. I wasn't perfect," he admitted, "but I tried to be fair, and I tried to be real." His final message to Doris was simple yet piercing in its honesty. "If I've learned anything, it's that being kind lasts longer than being famous. We outlived the noise, Doris. Maybe that was the point all along." There was no dramatics, no tearful farewell, just quiet clarity. In confessing it all, Garner did what he had done best throughout his life. He told the truth. And in doing so, he left something far more lasting than stardom. He left a reminder that even the most celebrated lives gain meaning not from applause, but from honesty, humility, and the courage to speak from the heart. Garner and Doris Day shared a decades-long friendship and unforgettable chemistry on screen, starring together in The Thrill of It All and Move Over Darling in 1963. Their Midwestern charm made their portrayals of married couples feel instantly authentic, and audiences loved them for it. Yet behind the charm, Garner's later years were shadowed by relentless health battles. During the grueling production of the Rockford Files in the 1970s, his knees, already worn from a physically demanding career, began to fail. What started as ordinary wear and tear escalated into a chronic problem, leading to 6 or 7 operations over the decade. Pain and limited mobility could not stop him. He returned to work time and again, embodying the toughness and resilience that defined both his life and his career. James Garner's body had paid the price for a life of fearless dedication, and it almost didn't keep up. The toll of decades in front of the camera and on set became impossible to ignore. By 2000, the damage to his knees was so severe that Garner underwent full replacement surgery on both joints, a stark reminder of how much his body had sacrificed for his craft. But the struggles didn't stop there. On April 22, 1988, he faced a life-threatening heart crisis requiring quintuple bypass surgery. The operation was serious, a sobering moment for anyone who knew him. Yet Garner amazed friends and doctors alike with his resilience, bouncing back faster than expected. Medical experts strongly urged him to quit smoking, a habit he had carried since he was just 12. It took years, but he finally gave up cigarettes in 2005. His daughter, Gigi Garner, would later describe the feat as extraordinary, given how deeply ingrained the habit had been. In May 2008, another challenge struck. Garner suffered a stroke. Within 2 days, he underwent surgery to address the complication. Even so, his doctors remained optimistic, sharing a positive prognosis, not only for him, but for fans who had followed his career for decades. Through it all, Garner's determination to endure and to keep living life on his own terms remained unmistakable. James Garner faced his final curtain not on a movie set, but in the quiet of his own home, a hero in real life as much as on screen. The stroke he'd suffered years earlier had already changed the course of his life, leaving his health fragile and his body no longer what it once was. On July 20, 2014, emergency responders arrived at his Brentwood, Los Angeles home to find the beloved actor had passed away peacefully at 86. The cause, a heart attack triggered by coronary artery disease. Garner had been battling declining health since that stroke, his body worn down by decades of hard work and illness. Yet, even in these final years, he displayed the same quiet strength that had defined his career. His physical struggles revealed a deeply human side of the man audiences loved for generations, resilient, dignified, and unwavering. In his passing, James Garner left more than an extraordinary body of work. He left a legacy of courage and grace in the face of life's harshest trials.